Awakening is a word that a lot of people use. Unfortunately, there is no consensus about what it means. And there are many kinds of awakenings. So I would normally use the term awakening to refer to self-realization, or what other people may call cosmic consciousness, and then all the stages that unfold after that. I still use awakening with regard to stages prior to that, but I tend to qualify them a little differently so that it's clear that I'm making a distinction between what happens in self-realization and beyond and what happens prior. So for example, I might say awakening to the ego or awakening to the soul, because these are stages that occur for some people prior to self-realization. So I've divided some things up here because I think it clarifies how that process unfolds. One of those is the concept of identity. And I think most people are referring to a shift of identity when they talk about awakening or any other term they use to refer to the spiritual process and the transformations that take place. So what I mean by identity is, what is it that we feel or experience as our principal sense of self? And what that is shifts as we move through the stages of spiritual unfoldment. And that in itself is what brings about descriptions of spaciousness and clarity, freedom, openness. So the shift of identity is really the fundamental shift that's taking place as these different stages unfold. But there's another facet of the process which I refer to as clarity. And this is the process where there is the refinement of the mechanisms of the senses, the mechanisms of perception, and it's based in part also on refinement of our mind, our body, and our intellect, because they shift and change along with the process, and they oftentimes have to catch up with the shifts of identity that take place. And clarity also refers to the direct receipt of knowledge or the depth of the experience itself. So clarity is an important facet, but it's usually an after the fact process that takes place after a shift of identity has occurred. And the third facet that I think is important to bring out is what I refer to as maturity. Within each stage, there's a process of maturing within it. There's often, especially at the beginning, a sort of surprise, a shock. Things are different now. We have to learn to function with that shift. The body and the mind have to adapt to that shift. So there's a settling in time, and there's a time for it to mature into an integration of that shift that's taken place. So these three things, identity, clarity, and maturity, I think need to be looked at with regard to awakening so that we understand, what is the full scope of what's taken place. But again, it is identity that is the principal shift within awakening. And these others are other facets of the process as it continues to unfold.